Hello guys, here is Abdullah Zaghloul and today's discussion is about Laravel repository pattern, how to fetch data from different source of data, something like a query layer, cache layer. So firstly, we should know the difference between the two main type of ORM. The first one is data mapper, something like Prisma. Second one is active record pattern, which is Laravel ORM. So for example, at the data mapper, we have a database record for a user, which have ID, name, and email colon values. We map those to a plain object of user, have the properties ID, name, and email. And here we go. So once we get the user, we have a plain object with those properties. It doesn't have a method for update or delete. It doesn't carry any database logic. On the other hand, at the active record pattern, it maps the data also from database to object, but this object is not a plain one. It have a name, ID, and email, which is the column values of the database, but it also have a method for update or delete. It have all the database logic needed, and this called active record pattern, because once I delete or update this user, it will update the current object and update the database record. Okay, what about repository pattern? Repository is a data layer, not only a database layer. So you need to implement a repository once you are working with data mapper, because it doesn't have any functionality. You have a plain object. For example, once I get the user at this repo here, this user, may I need to add another attribute? May I need to hide password, for example, and hydrate the data here? So I need the user repo instead of working with the ORM directly here. Okay, this is for data mapper. What about active record pattern? I see a lot of over-engineering when using Laravel by creating another layer of repository. So here, if we go for this example, to implement a repository layer, you go to implement a user or repository interface, and this is implemented by your own cache layer and duplicating yourself here at database logic, because as you can see here, the old method will call the user old, the create will call the user create. In addition to this, some developers saying I may get the data from different connection. Model have a built-in $sign connection property here at Laravel, which make you easy to change the type of your own database connection. So instead of getting it from SQLite, you may get it from external MySQL. Okay, what about changing to NoSQL? If you're working with NoSQL, of course you need to change a lot of logic of your own application. But at Laravel, you just extend this model of MongoDB here, for example. And here we go. So in all scenarios, you doesn't need a repository layer, because you have already the database logic with the model. All what you need is just to merge the new logic of cache to this model. So here, for example, this model has a database layer, and you just add a trait for caching, and here we go. And how to separate the queries from model? If we make model carry all the scopes, it will end this with a big centralized model, and I don't need to do this. So if you go for this model here, you have a method called new eloquent builder. So once you are override this and create a new one which extends the eloquent builder, you could add any query logic here, and now you are carrying the eloquent builder. For your info, Laravel query work as the following. The ORM calls the eloquent builder, and the eloquent builder calls the query builder, which is using DB table and getting the data using this way. So if you need to get any data, all what you do, you will separate your queries here. So now this is a search scope, this is by name scope, and if we go for our service here, I want to say order by name and it will automatically map me to this one. And to do this, all what you do, override this method and just go here and type a mixin for your own IDE, and here we go. Now autocomplete working fine. And what about if I need to work with Query Builder? Of course, you shouldn't do DB table, because DB table, you will fill the table again. What if you change the table from the model? And you will do set connection before getting the table, and then do table here. So what is the solution here? The solution here, if you are working with Eloquent Builder, you are now have all the model capabilities and have also the Query Builder capabilities. So at Eloquent Builder, once you say this model, now you have all the model. If I say get table, you will get the table, for example. And of course, if I say this query, this means I will get the query builder. So this equal to DB query builder, for example here, this get query equal to this query equal to DB table. So I can chain my data. But I'm not big fan to do this. I'm a big fan of doing your query here, and once you finish your own query, for example, I search by name, so when the name is filled, do the query for the name, and after this, all what you do is just say to base. Once you say to base and say get or paginate or what you need here, this means it will return a plain object of data because you are working with a query builder, not an eloquent builder.